My name is Camila Lopez. I am a rising sophomore at the University of Alabama, while I'm double majoring in political science and legal history with a double minor in English and Latin American studies. I am a part of the Blackburn Institute as well as Vote Everywhere UA, and I'm also a part of UA Legacy Scholars, which is a first generation group.
My name is Julienne Pharrams. I am a rising junior at the University of Alabama, where I'm a double major in political science and communication studies with a minor in social welfare. At the University of Alabama, I'm a member of the Blackburn Institute, a member of UA Vote Everywhere, and I'm an intern for Return My Vote, which is a virtual voting right restoration clinic. Okay, we're here and we're going to talk about voting, and I'm super excited.
I am so excited, especially doing it with you, Julienne.
I mean, this wouldn't be the first time that we talk about things that we're passionate about together.
That is very true. We actually done it before in previous years as high schoolers with YMCA Youth Government. And I am just so excited to be a part of this program and also just to see you, since I know you are super passionate about a ton of different topics that we're probably going to cover over here today.
Yeah, I agree. I'm so excited to be here. I think it's really cool. I know we spent a lot of years together. You've heard me talk about the prison system for years upon years, and I've gotten to listen to all of your passion about the border and all things that have to do with second language and ELA. And so I just think it's really cool to see those passions lead over into college and to be able to have these conversations with you.
Absolutely. And I can, I guess, go ahead and ask you about how your passion kind of started with civic engagement, how that first kind of step and how you kind of evolved to be over here in the university.
Yeah, so I think that I was very blessed to grow up with two parents who cared a lot about making sure that I was aware of the things that are going on in the world and that I knew that my voice mattered, and the only way that the things I cared about were going to be talked about is if I opened my mouth and talked about them myself. So from a young age, that was kind of instilled in me. I know around middle school is when we kind of started those youth in government programs, but that's also the year that the Equal Justice Initiative opened in Montgomery, which wasn't far at all from where I lived. And so we went at its opening, and I saw a documentary called The 13th. And that was where I learned so much about the prison system, so much about the 13th Amendment and about how that still affects people today and how it still affects prisoners today. And I just couldn't understand why we weren't talking more about it. And so from there on, I kind of knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life was be someone who amplifies those voices that aren't always being heard.
That's incredible, Julienne. How did you put into those passions with you being a part of the University of Alabama? Did you find kind of those avenues of being able to be very civically engaged through UA?
Yeah, I did. So I know we're both members of the Blackburn Institute. I was so excited to see that you were joining this past year. But applying for that my freshman year, I was really excited because one of the biggest tenets is diversity of opinion, diversity of thought. And I wanted to have the opportunity to have those hard conversations with my peers. I know that it's kind of taken for granted that our generation doesn't care as much about a lot of these issues. And I just don't think that that's the truth. And I don't think that that's the case for a lot of people at the University of Alabama. And so by going into some of these areas, I was able to find people who care and are just as passionate, much like you, about these issues and have those conversations with them. And so that's been a really awesome experience. And then through the Blackburn Institute, I was able to get the internship I mentioned earlier, focused on voting rights restoration, people who, once they get out of prison, they might think that they don't have the right to vote, but technicalities in Alabama's laws mean they never lost it. And there are so many people who are behind bars actually and can still vote, or who have been released from prison and still have the right to vote and don't know about it. And so many of them want that opportunity to use their voice. They want that opportunity to be able and affect our elections and affect the policies that in turn affect them. And so it's just been a really awesome experience to be able to let them know, like, hey, that's not a right that you ever lost. But what about you? What are some things that you've been able to do at the University of Alabama that kind of go in line with your passions?
No, absolutely. And that's incredible that you found that drive through the university. I found it through the same way you did, through Blackburn. But I think a little bit before then, I kind of grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, but my whole family is from Colombia. So my mom came over here 30 years ago, just with her and her kids, and she did an incredible job raising us. Just by herself, she managed to make the best life for me and my sister and my brother, which I always in the back of my head knew that I wanted to give back. And I didn't know really how I was going to make that a possibility, but I just knew in my heart that was a passion of mine. So I think through the YMCA, through our youth government, I was able to see, shoot, we do have a say in government. We can make policies and changes within our own government just by being able to be engaged. And I was very lucky enough to be in a program in my school that was, had those programs, had the availabilities of like, hey, like let's be a part of this YMCA organization and let's put our time and effort into making sure our kids are aware of what's going on. I think without that, I would have never learned about, let's say, the HB 56 law, which was one of the harshest anti-immigration bills that was passed. And I wasn't able to know about that and actually help be kind of in the forefront of changing that, of repealing that throughout our programs. So I think those organizations, especially for youths, have always been such a passion of mine to always see and to raise their voices of, because that's where true change happens. And I love what you said before about having the youth not care about, topics that we talk about, having it be dismissed as, oh, this is never going to be something that we're going to be engaged in. The youth never wants to hear about change. They've given up. Gen Z is kind of behind on everything and they're taking the brunt out of a lot of things. Right. And I don't think that's the case either. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, they're tired. Mm-hmm. I am also tired, even being in part of the civic engagement world and being a part of politics, I get exhausted. So seeing my peers being like, I am passionate about helping my mom, right, find proper health care, right, or making sure that I get a proper education and my brother gets proper education. Those types of topics don't really get talked about much, mm-hmm, in a positive way. So through Blackburn, I was able to see a group of students who really wanted to sit down and talk about change. Yeah. So how can we find different avenues to make Alabama better? Yeah. And so through Blackburn, I was able to see, about the Hispanic Coalition of Alabama, HICA, and I was able to be a part of that, to volunteer, to actually intern there, to actually see hands-on what I could do for my community, right, which has been a blessing in itself. Mm-hmm. And also just find people that are also a part of that sphere, right, being a part of HLA, mm-hmm, within UA, being a part of Vote Everywhere. I've been able to find people like myself that are passionate and want to make sure that other people are aware and know that they have a voice.
Yeah, I really liked what you were talking about how people our age, it's not that they don't care, it's that they care about different things. Maybe like what you're talking about, you care about your mom. There are people who care about making sure that people have affordable health care. There are people that care about a lot of topics and a lot of issues, but I think that there's been a disconnect, and whether that's in education or in perception about what exactly it is that voting accomplishes. I think that a lot of people who feel as though their vote doesn't matter or that they don't have a voice have this misconception that the only time that they need to cast a vote is once every 4 years when it's the presidential election, and that vote doesn't actually matter because at the end of the day, the Electoral College is going to decide it. And that's not true. I think that a lot of emphasis needs to be placed on local elections. I think it's so important that every 4 years people do get out and they do vote and they do make their voices heard. But I think that those smaller elections that are determining your day-to-day life, they aren't talked about as much. And so people do end up feeling like they don't have a vote or they don't have a voice, and like they can't influence some of those everyday trials and tribulations that they're encountering because so many people don't realize just how much local elections matter and just how much their local vote matters. I think that's a big issue with not just our generation, but with all generations. I think we kind of need to change the conversation when it comes to the way that we talk about voting and what voting influences and impacts.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about having people care about different topics and having us steer the conversation to more of an impactful way that they can see the actual change happening. Because that happens in local elections. Mm-hmm. But that's not a lot of people what kind of they notice. Yeah. Because I think the biggest issue that we're also facing is that people aren't having a civic curriculum. They don't know what civics really means. All they know is that it's from the news. It's kind of daunting. It's just seeing how they can kind of pull apart the other party. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a negative space
Right.
that I find myself not wanting to engage in.
No, yeah.
And so I think the biggest way that people can be aware of what matters to them is that they talk about within their own communities, okay, what are the things that I truly care about?
Right.
And so for me personally, it's about making sure that my community is seen
Right.
through, let's just say, English speaking education. And how I do that is I kind of like, okay, like what are organizations that I can volunteer at? Which one of the examples is HICA. Okay, great, I'm part of HICA. What are some representatives that actually support non-profit organizations, such as HICA, such as the YMCA?
Yeah.
And that kind of snowballs into seeing, oh, I can actually vote for this local official actually this month, and I can be engaged and aware of those policies. And I think what people kind of get turned off by is that the fact that there's so much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so much that we can change as a society, as a collective, that gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
So making sure that people be engaged, know that, and understand that you can be worried about one specific topic that you were impacted by.
Right.
You can be focused on just one kind of avenue to start off with. You don't have to be knowledgeable on all of the different topics that we have in our political sphere. I don't know that. For sure I don't. But making sure like, okay, like I want to make sure that my mom has a happy life, that my family has a happy life. Those are some avenues that I can take that is maybe just one subject, but it can snowball into being aware of the change that you can make.
No, I agree. I think that there should be a shift. I think so many people do try and start at that huge umbrella of, okay, these are the two presidential candidates and these are everything that these two presidential candidates believe. And so now I need to see which one agrees with everything that I want, and that's how I'm going to determine who to vote based off of. And I think that that's where a lot of people are running into the issues. You hear a lot more often people talking about how morally they're running into a challenge of morality because they can't morally agree with this point or this point on whichever candidate. And I think that if we started from the bottom instead of starting from the top, if we started with, this is an issue that I care about, these are people who need help, these are people who need protecting. Now, which candidate supports the most policies that realize that goal, that the most policies that protect those people, the most policies that would affect that change that I want to see, and go from there, then I think we would see a lot more people who see it less of a moral proclamation of, yes, I agree with everything that this person's ever said or done, and more of a, no, my moral obligation is to vote. My moral obligation is to use my voice and use my vote for the people who can't use their voice and can't use their votes. I think people have forgotten just how hard it was for everyone in this nation to get that right to vote. People fought and they died and they marched and they protested for us to have the right to use our voice. And so it's not only irresponsible, it's callous to then throw away that vote and that voice that people have tried so hard and worked so hard for so many years to give me that opportunity. I think that that's a privilege that can't be thrown away. That's a right that we have to use.
Absolutely. And I think especially within our current times, how polarizing it can be to see on the news outlets, you tend to see both parties do this thing where they're like, this is the ultimate evil. This is the ultimate challenge. You have to vote, or if not, you're going to die, or you're going to have such a consequence that is monumental, which can be true.
Right.
But at the same time, that doesn't impact change. That doesn't incite inspiration, or does that make an actual impact on the people, like an everyday people?
Right.
Because they're not seeing this as, oh my gosh, this is a life-making change, because they've already given up. They've already feeling tired of constantly hearing the same narrative of, this is the final election, this is the final vote. And what needs to change is that it should be a continuous thing.
Right.
As a person, we fought so hard for the right to vote. We have our voice heard, and we need to continue that for generations to come.
Absolutely.
So making sure that people are aware of reviewing what their actual policy takes are, making sure that they find their own information about what they want to see changed, and seeing what politician or what specific person can make that change is supposed to be in support of.
Yes.
Because a lot of times what I also see is that people kind of go along with their party lines.
Yes.
And it's getting to a point now where people don't like their parties.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, if I don't like this party, what am I going to turn to now? And so in order for us to make that change, we need to make sure that they understand that it's not just the party, it's your own policies.
Right.
Making sure that your voice can be heard, but making sure you do that research and see who can actually lie into that.
Absolutely.
So I know this conversation is going to end soon, Julienne, and it's been such a pleasure talking to you. But I actually want to talk to you about what your real life experiences have been through being someone who wants to vote. I've seen maybe your family member or your friends who have this growing apathy or kind of this hesitation to vote with this upcoming election, and how you've kind of talked about it, or maybe if your opinions have changed throughout this course of seeing yourself wanting to vote.
Yeah, actually just the other week I was meeting with a friend, and as they do, politics came up.
Of course.
And we were talking, and she's actually is one of those people who had that moral block of she just doesn't think that she can align fully with either candidate, and she's very apprehensive about voting. And I tried to have a conversation kind of like this one, and she just wasn't really buying it. And so I thought of a video that I'd actually seen the week prior, and it kind of framed voting in a different way. And I think that it was a way that appealed to her. I think it did because she is now voting. But it was basically talking about how if you can't think of the candidates as which one supports you the most, which one aligns with you the most, then think of it like you're choosing an opponent. Think of it like you're choosing someone to go up against. This is the person whose policies you're going to have to push against. This is the person who you're going to have to fight for your rights and fight for what you want in your vision of America under this leader. Which leader would you rather have be that opposition? And I thought that was a really cool way to look at it. And it's not one that I'd considered, but it's one that really resonated with her. And after that conversation, she did her own research, she came to her own conclusions, and she decided that she is going to get out and she is going to vote. So I think that, just shifting that paradigm, looking at it from a different point of view is sometimes all that this generation needs in order to get out and cast that vote.
That's incredible, Julienne.
But what about you? What have your experiences been like, especially as we come into this election and those conversations that you've been having with the people around you?
Yeah, so I have multiple conversations, obviously, as one does, about politics, about this election, upcoming, fears and apathies of it coming to fruition, of them, a lot of my friends actually having just this reservation within themselves of this is pointless. I don't see the point of me voting. I don't think I'm just the actual change. I'm just another drop in this bucket of the number that might not even be worth it. And I think for them, I know them personally, and so I always try to kind of resonate them with a different situation for them. But the way that I posed it, and it's pretty cheesy, but it kind of got the job done because they eventually did want to vote and saw the apathy. But I asked them, who is your favorite person, or who is your loved one that you want to make sure that they have the best life? And they answered like their aunt was very special to them. They helped them a lot through their process and through their journey of applying for college, of being able to be here and where they are today. And I say, what type of world do you want to see your aunt live in? What type of space is she going to have? What type of healthcare? What type of access is she going to have to be able to support herself? Because she had a couple of procedures that were a little bit tough on her. And they talked about it. They were like, I want to make sure that she's properly taken care of. I want to make sure that she has the right resources always. And I want to make sure that she doesn't have to constantly struggle in today's world.
Right.
And I, asked them, well, if you had the opportunity to make that decision for yourself, would you use your voice to make sure that she gets the best care? And they were, absolutely. I want to make sure that, I say my own piece. I want to make sure that she gets all of it. And no matter what I have to do, I'll do it. And I told them, well, in this upcoming election, you have the opportunity. You have that chance to make your vote and say, hey, this is what I want to see change for my loved one. I want to make sure they have the best life. And it might not be the perfect life, but it is the best way that they can be provided for in this world. And I kind of talked to them through it, and it kind of also made me change and realize that I always want to live through this world through love, to make sure that I use my voice to propel others and make sure that they have the best life that they can live. So it was just a little way, and it was actually one of the best parts of my day to see them kind of resonate with that, and to always know that, even with such hostility in this nation coming along, and seeing how many people are just filled with animosity towards each other, to understand that, there is love there.
Right.
Through the root of it all, everyone just wants to see change. Everyone just wants to make sure that they have the best life that they can live. And if you kind of resonate with that, it makes it much easier to have conversations, to make sure, like, no, I do care for you. I see you as a human, and we can make change. And I can see, how we have differences, but through those differences, I can still respect you. Because at the base level, we just all want to make change.
Exactly. And one of the most loving things you can do for another person is vote for a better America for them. So yeah, that's awesome.
Julienne, it's been so great to see you.
It's been so great to see you. It's been so great to have this conversation and see different lenses through which we view voting. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I hope that we can do this again.
I hope so too. This was so great.
Thank you for listening. We are so appreciative of our incredible guests, Camila Lopez and Julienne Pharrams. We also want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Turbo Coffee for hosting us in their fabulous downtown Tuscaloosa coffee house. And now, a moment of appreciation for Share the Mic's unsung heroes, Ronnie Gatry, our videographer, Imandre Johnson, our social media director, Libby Lassiter, our producer, and Delane Hurd, creator of the episode trailer. Without them, this show would not be possible. To support our 2024 mission to engage youth in voting, follow us on social media and share this episode with your friends. Together, we can make a difference. This podcast is a proud production of Share the Mic LLC, a small band of diverse friends with a passion for social justice.